excited, thrilled to have you all join for another webinar, part of our Rethink community series, where we really question ourselves on how we're approaching different aspects of our industry and just have some discussions, share some thought leadership around maybe some trends that are going on. What are some things we can rethink? What are some best practices to consider? So it only makes absolute natural sense to bring in two of our amazing partners from VIVE and AvidXchange, two people who have tremendous amount of experience being right in your shoes, while also speaking as vendors and partners to help make your business run more efficiently every day and help your job just be easier all in all. Today we have Jarrett Tran from AvidXchange, who specializes on the strong room product side, so a product many of you are familiar with. And we have Connor Doyle from VIVE, who also many of you are familiar with in terms of vendor relationships and understanding ratings and quality of vendors. So without further ado, let's dive in and get to know these guys more. Connor, Jarrett, thank you so much for your time today. Thrilled to have you both. Let's hear a little bit of your background. So Connor, I know that you have almost every certification out there for a CAM manager. Share your journey and what got you to VIVE, if you don't mind.
Yeah, and just to be clear, the one I don't have is a large scale manager certification, because that job's too hard for someone with my limited intellect. All the LSMs out there, nothing but love and respect. I can't get that one. But yeah, I spent 15 years running management companies, 10 of my own. And after that time, after about my 1000th night meeting, I decided that I wanted to try something a little different, but I wanted to remain connected with the industry. So I ended up, falling into a great opportunity with VIVE. And the reason that I decided to become a salesperson, even though I don't think I'm necessarily suited towards the job, is that it's a product that I really wish existed, frankly, when I had my own management company. It's one that I truly believe in. And, as we're going to talk about today, I really feel that it's a product that meets the moment that we're facing right now in terms of the risks that associations and management companies are facing, the unexpected cost of doing business, a lot of the struggles I think that the people that are on this call today are facing within their own organizations. I don't want to say that VIVE can solve everything, but I feel that we can be a part of that solution. And, I'll kick it over to someone who represents another company that I think can be a part of that with Jarrett and AvidXchange.
Thanks, Connor. And thank you for having us today. So I started in the business 19 years ago. I was in the management side of it for 18, and I decided after all that time to hang up my cleats and do this from a different angle. So I enjoyed working with managers, mentoring managers, homeowners. Like Connor, I have all kinds of those letters and credentials behind my name. And like Connor, I also do not have the LSM. So I stopped at PCAM. That was enough for me.
Yep.
So good for you guys that got your LSM. Proud of you.
Absolutely.
So anyway, I enjoyed mentoring managers. That was probably the last 6 to 8 years I was in leadership roles. Most recently working for a company based in North Carolina. I ran the operations for their Charlotte division. And prior to that, my boss and I, when I was working for a company in Texas, we started an on-site division for a large management company there. So I've seen a lot, and I've enjoyed the ride, but now I wanted to use my experience to be able to help management companies work more efficiently and become more profitable. I think that some of the technology products that are out there that are available to us right now are helping management companies be more that way. And we're doing a lot of cool things that make it so that people aren't constantly having to keep their finger on every single task that a management company has to do for their client. So there are products like Strong Room and VIVE that really do a great job for that, and that's why we're here today. So thanks again, and we're happy to be here.
Yeah. So you guys talk and allude to a lot of the things that can help today. Let's dive in further. Like how would you define what a great vendor relationship looks like today? And Connor, kick us off here, if you don't mind.
Well, I think first and foremost, what defines it today, and I think the elemental core of it is what's defined it forever, which is, ultimately that you're getting the services that you ask for. Because no matter how much management companies try and separate themselves from the work that's being done, because obviously you don't want your relationship to hinge on the performance of a third party. There's really no getting around it. Part of what management companies are expected to do is bring great vendors onto property and help make sure that the work that's being performed is to the standards that the association expects. So I don't know if that's changed. I think what's changed is all of the sort of parallel forces that now attend the vendor relationship that I don't necessarily know. I know I did not necessarily take it seriously when I was in the shoes of the people on this call today, which is that it's a massive amount of liability that's in place every time a vendor steps foot on property. Now, that's always been the case, but the massive is what's grown there. And what we're seeing is that we live in uncertain economic times. I feel for our industry, we've sort of been on a weird level basically ever since 2008, 2009. Well, we've had some boom years since then as management companies. I don't know that our vendor pool has ever really recovered from the damage that was caused by the first financial collapse. Basically ever since that date, I think it's been a real common thread of people saying they're having difficulty finding good vendors. They're noticing that people are leaving the market. Certainly, I know my last management stop in Dallas, there was one irrigation tech for the entire DFW area for one of the largest landscaping companies in the entire city. So I think that one of the main forces that people see is the difficulty in acquiring vendors. But another thing that we have to take into account is that there are real financial motivations for people to not necessarily hold up their end of the bargain when it comes to being properly insured, keeping up their business practices, keeping up licenses and things like that. And every uninsured or underinsured vendor that comes onto property, it means that the association's insuring them. And if the association finds itself in the crosshairs of a liability from a vendor accident, the management company has to expect that there's going to be blowback onto them. I know that we have indemnification clauses in all of our contracts, but what we're finding out is that the power of that clause is that you may eventually get yourself out of the liability, but it's going to cost you money to extricate yourself from that situation. And you may still have to file a claim on your own company's policy. So what we really, I think, need to begin taking seriously is assessing the risk and making sure that we are putting programs into place. And I'll let Jared talk about the specific type of risk that's involved on his end of the equation, but certainly ours is when the work's being performed, we want to make sure that the people who are performing that work have made a promise to take full responsibility for everything that happens as a result of their actions, and also have insurance and protections in place that should something happen, we've got a protection here to protect the association's loss run and stop this from becoming a cataclysmic event, because HOA insurance costs are not going to stop going up. We expect them to continue rising. We know that they've pretty much already doubled in the last 5 years for most parts of the country. There's not much we can do about that, but what we can do is protect that loss run and try and make sure that we're not taking an already bad situation and making it worse.
Very good point. And Jared, let's dive in more on that other side.
I agree with Connor.
Thanks, Jared. That's it.
I think we might have some tech.
Mhm.
I think we're having some technical difficulties. Let me see if I've got.
No, Jared, you're on. You're good. We can hear you. Now I think we have some technical difficulties.
Yes.
Just to keep things moving, and since I do know a little bit about, the situation with Strong Room, and I'll let Jared pick up the thread here. I'll tell him exactly where I stopped. Another thing that I didn't take seriously when I was running my management company was the risk involved in cutting checks from your own office. And it's manifest in a couple of different ways. First of all, if you're cutting checks from your own office, it means you have check stock in your own office. And that means employees might have access to it. And I know that you may have security protocols in place to prevent anyone from accessing that, but that's still a liability. But the real issue is just check payments in general. Probably the largest remaining area of fraudulent activity that we see with homeowners associations are checks that are forged. And, Jared, I was just talking about the dangers of check forging. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I'm sorry, I don't know what's happened on the internet here in the office today, but can you guys hear me okay?
Yes,
Yes, we can. Why
Sorry.
don't you pick up the thread and talk about the dangers of check forging and what kind of and that kind of fraudulent activity, how it can hurt management companies?
Glad to. So I've actually have encountered a handful of management companies that have experienced a few different versions of fraud as related to payments. So one of the most common that we see is that there has been somebody that's pretty much just taken the routing number and the account number off of the check, and they've gone to town with that. I mean, we at Avid, we really encourage electronic payments because it provides some protections to the associations that we serve. In fact, we have there's a clearing account that exists between the management company and the association, so we're not actually cutting payments directly off of the association's account. But today it's not really wise to be writing checks if we can avoid it. But we are aware that the industry in a lot of cases requires that. So we still serve that way. But the other way that we see fraud happening also in management companies, and this is where Connor's product comes in and works well with ours, is that we find that you may have every once in a while a dishonest employee somewhere, and they will create a new vendor. And when they create that vendor may be, I don't know, their best friend or their mama's cousin or whatever it is, and they will issue payments on behalf of the association to that vendor. And so without having vendor verification services, it might be problematic to keep your eye on what's going on there all the time. So some of these tools help that. In what's different about community association management in comparison to a lot of other industries, I believe, is that managers and management companies are required to be responsible for so many things, have their fingers on so many things that all at the same time, and know so much about unrelated items. Like, they got to know a little bit about law, they got to know a little bit about banking, a little bit about maintenance. And so they're really offering to be everything for an association. And today, more so than ever, it's critical for management companies to have the technology like CINC, like VIVE, and also Avid, to help them keep up with everything, but B, quantify all of the tasks that are being managed on a regular basis, because that in fact builds value for their clients.
Yeah, definitely.
And I just want to insert one more thing. I think it's a general thought that's just a really useful heuristic for people as they encounter everything that's going on. There are probably a lot of people on this call who have had companies or have worked for companies that have been successful for decades. And that is a testament to strength, and it is a testament to good organizational philosophies and all that kind of stuff. But the most dangerous phrase in the English language is, "That's the way I've always done it." And we have to acknowledge that the sands are shifting beneath us a little bit. And it's not just our industry. I think it's, in a lot of senses, it's never been harder to have a business. I mean, in the last 2 weeks, a lot of us have had to become really familiar with banking. That's not something that we necessarily wanted to think about. It was something that we took for granted. And, now we have to take that into account. And we probably, as management professionals, been facing questions about an industry that we really don't have any direct correlation to, but we're still expected to speak towards it and the threats that it might pose, the stability of our clients. So, I say this to management company owners, I say this to board members a lot when I do board webinars, is just because you've done something this way for 20 years doesn't mean that still works for today. And that the only way to properly protect the assets that you have in your control, whether it's your company or whether it's the association's finances, is to stay abreast of what's going on and try and avail yourself of as much help. And as Jared just said, whether it's CINC, VIVE, Avid, some of the other third parties that are out there, all of these things represent an opportunity to get better at something without having to do the work yourself at being fully versed in everything that's going on. And so that is the biggest sort of takeaway that I like people to come away with, is whatever it is, there's help out there, and take those people up on that offer.
I agree.
Most definitely.
One thing that I think that, we're talking about how we are responding to vendor relationships today. One of the things that I think is critical for us to talk about, pulling all the things we've just spoken about into it, is that there's been an ongoing problem where I think that vendors, they don't necessarily know how to work with management companies, because they don't know really they don't understand the relationship between the management company and the board. We've had historically in our business, we've had vendors thinking they report to the board, and we've all had, if you've been a manager, you've all known the vendor that goes directly to the board member and is in their pocket, and it creates a lot of confusion, and it's actually often a conflict of interest. And so it is one thing that we have to do in this business is better educate our vendors as management companies how to work with us. And so having some of these technology services, such as VIVE, Avid, CINC, it helps create or establish lanes for vendors. And so they know a path. This is what we do. This is the standard. This is the expectation. And eventually that gets out there. What's nice about that, and I'm sure this probably is the same for Connor, but for Avid, when we sign on new clients, a lot of the time, we don't have to introduce their vendors to StrongRoom because they're already on our network. They already know how to work with us. And that helps quite a bit. It also makes it easier for vendors. Vendors now, they know that they have options for paying. A lot of times the vendors become educated. For example, and I think I mentioned this the other day to Connor, but in the management business, typically we ask for a W-9 and a COI. And on the certificate of insurance, we often, when I was in management, I often would find that there are missing coverages on the certificate. And so a lot of the times, managers might not know how to look at that certificate. They'll say, oh, we got the certificate, it's got whatever name on it. Okay, good. And so what I found in those circumstances is that I would actually have a conversation with the manager and maybe the vendor and say, in order to work with this community, you need to have this type of coverage. And sometimes they just didn't even know that that's what they needed. And so the conversation wasn't about just covering the management company or covering the community. It was also about protecting the vendor as well. And I think that those conversations we need to be better at in the industry, making happen with those vendors so that we're all kind of singing from the same playbook.
Yeah, definitely. It's like setting the standard, right? So if we set the standard of expectation with vendors, we'll see a direct benefit. And if nothing else, we'll cover our assets. And just to, I know like there's a chance, and this is something that I know Connor and Jarrett and our team here at CINC encounter a lot, to Connor's point about complacency, right? Is you hear all of these things and you hear all these tools and you're like, yeah, that all sounds great, but I see dollar signs everywhere. But we have realized actual cost savings, all three technology platforms here, and utilizing and leveraging technology to serve you, to make your business more transparent, more efficient across the board. For example, CINC and AvidXchange have an awesome partnership where our integration is only getting stronger. So more to come there. Very excited to soon have vendor pay, which will be within the CINC platform, leaning on that network that Jared alluded to. But we've realized actual savings for our clients, being able to pay vendors through the AvidXchange network. You cut down on a lot of the paper chase, the manual processing, et cetera. And I think, Connor, you can talk a little bit more about trends and whatnot and some of those fears, right? So sometimes people allude or take technology and make it directly associated with cutting staff, but we don't we don't really talk about that. We're actually really talking about leveraging technology so you open up the bandwidth for your existing staff to focus on other things and other concerns in our industry. Do you guys want to dive in a little bit more here, Connor? Kick us off here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who feels that they're in a position right now that even if they could, that they would want to cut staff, because all we hear about is how difficult it is to find people to come and work for our companies in the first place. You know, the way that I look at it is that no management company is ever going to be judged by their clients based upon how well they pay invoices, or what their vendor compliance program is, or how good their bank reconciliation is. You know, that's not really what they're into. What they're into is having access to people who will answer their questions, solve their problems, attend their meetings, and respond to their emails. So what I look at, what technology is here to do is liberate. And instead of replacing human beings, really give human beings the opportunity to do what only they can, in spite of what people may talk about with AI. I don't know if you've interacted with it. AI is not a good facsimile of a human interaction. It actually suffers quite a bit at understanding how it is that people should be approached. And so if you like someone enough to hire them, I would like for you to have that person doing something client facing. And, you know, the three people on this call, and frankly, most of the people that you meet at trade shows who are on the software side, what we're really trying to do is say, if you have people in your office who never see daylight, or never on the other side of a phone or on an email, and are just sitting there doing sort of the grind, the administrative work that we all know is required in order to keep everything moving, that's a resource misallocation. And you know, I've been lucky enough to not only be in control of my own organization, but to get a really intimate look at how other successful management companies are run from the inside. And what I will say is that all management companies, to varying degrees, have they are leaking somewhere. They are leaking money out the door because they are holding on to a process that no longer makes sense. It is outmoded. There is an opportunity there for them to update their processes, spend less money on it, and redirect internal resources. And very rarely, when we assess why something fails, do we concentrate our efforts on the years and years of sclerosis that lead to the big thing falling down. But very often, if you are able to address those various little leaks, those opportunities you have to not spend your resources on something, those will prevent the big collapse from happening down the road. And so, you know, I don't pick on banks, but like, you know, we all just got, and now everybody wants to do a postmortem on why this, why this organization fell. But the truth is that was 10 years in the making. And there were a bunch of little decisions or non-decisions that led to there being a system-wide collapse. And it's really hard sometimes when you are in the middle of it to properly assess whether or not you're really succeeding on that account, whether you've addressed those leaks, because it could be a blind spot that you, in fact, have inserted into your own organization. And so bringing in people who know what they're doing and are really invested in this, you know, every one of us is a consultant. And I really do feel that we've seen a lot of people embrace the idea of your banking relationship person as a consultant because they're very good at it. They tend to know everything else that's going on. But every single one of us as partners, as technology partners, should be held to that same account. And so it's my sincere hope. I certainly try and do it with people that I'm talking to, is I ask them what else they're using. What are you using in terms of payments? What are you using in terms of resales? Things along those lines. It gives me an idea, first of all, to what degree that they are embracing technology, what chances there are as to whether or not they're going to be interested in VIVE in the first place. But I also want to be seen as someone who helped connect them to additional answers. I don't want VIVE to stand alone. I want us to be a part of a larger progressive plan for each management company, because what I want for every management company is you either grow or you sell for a lot of money. Those are the two outcomes that I want. What I hate to hear, and we don't hear too often anymore, but it might start coming back up, are management companies that just fail or just sort of fade away, lose a bunch of clients, and are a shell of what they used to be. There's no excuse for it. You've built so much. Every person on this call, to varying degrees, has spent so much of their energy building something that they truly believe in. And these are opportunities, we hope, to help reinforce the building that you've built and make sure it stands for many more years.
So there are so many things that you just talked about, Connor, that my mind's all over the place, but I'm going to try to keep this on the track. So the first thing that I'm going to say is, you were talking about, having some of these systems and replacing people. One of the conversations that I have with our clients most of the time is that I don't want to replace any of your people. In fact, I understand that what an income statement for a management company looks like. And the only way that you're going to move the needle is in fact with staff members. But I know enough about what the operations look like to tell you that you probably don't have enough staff members to do all the things that you need them to do. So I would like for you to use our solution and use the staff members that you have to do the work that is essentially their highest and best purpose in the organization, right? Not opening envelopes and scanning invoices and keying in data. I want to see you be able to use those people, to serve homeowners, vendors, whoever they need to, versus, sending them to a voicemail or email. One of the things that has happened, particularly since COVID, today in my role, when I'm in a certain city before a trade show, I will go in and drop by offices, bring treats and leave information, that kind of stuff. A lot of times I go to management companies and there's no one there. The doors are closed, the windows, and a lot of times there might be people there, but the door's closed because COVID started that, and the blinds are pulled. I get it, because you've got so many things to do. It probably helped us become a little bit more efficient in some ways because people weren't expecting somebody to be at the door. But things have changed, and now that we're back, offices are open, or we're more open in general. We want to have those people that have the knowledge and have the ability to interact with our clients, internal and external. We want to have those people front facing, right? So that's certainly one thing that I think is really important. The other thing is, by doing that, and we're talking about vendors, those people being available for our vendors when they do have problems or they do have questions, that's important, because you don't want to burn through vendors in a particular geographic location, right? Because, for example, I think we were talking about earlier, there was, one company that does this in this area, right? So you don't want to burn those out or fatigue them. And a lot of associations, or a lot of association management companies, encounter vendors that don't want to work with them because they don't want to work with homeowners associations. Because a lot of times they'll have the association will ask for 3 quotes every year, but they never do any business with that vendor. So we want to do things to make it easier to work with us. One of the things that at Avid that we are able to provide for vendors is we're able to get them paid quickly, and we give them options for getting paid. They may want to be paid almost instantaneously by an electronic form of payment. And for checks, we send them out. We do check runs every day except for Sunday. So what that means to these vendors are like, hey, we're going to get paid quickly. We don't have to worry about that with this company. Historically, and Connor and I have been around long enough to see this. I've worked for some companies that did a check run once a month. I've worked with ones that do every other week. I've done ones that do it every day, and the every day makes a big difference because our vendors need their money.
Yeah, especially with rising costs when we look at materials and just rising costs across the board, right? So very valid points. Jarrett, one thing you shared with me recently that was very much in alignment with our state of the industry results. So all of what we're discussing here today, very much aligned. So it's really cool to hear your guys' insight and just see how aligned it is as vendor relationships, our partner relationships, and have that alignment there. But within the state of the industry results, we saw that while homeowner apathy continued to be a top concern across not only HOA boards, but also across association management companies, the two following were almost the same level, same percentage of concern, maybe slight by 1%. And that's underfunded reserves and deferred maintenance, both of which can be combated by improving our vendor relationships. But the other key point that they felt like would really help to drive not only bettering vendor relationships, but bettering the homeowner experience as a whole is education. Jared, do you want to expand upon that? Because I know, like in our conversation the other day, you had some great insight on just the importance of education for homeowners, but also internally with managers.
Yeah, one of the things that I think that management companies need to remember is that there are a lot of people, managers cycle in and out of the business. You know, they hop management companies, and ideally you'd like for them to stay with you as long as possible. But I know that the reality is, you know, 2 to 5 years on average probably is not uncommon today. So for a manager to stay in one place. So I think that it's important that when we have processes that we use, that managers, they understand why, instead of just, this is the process. And I think that that's really important. Let's just talk about with Connor's product and what they do. So there's a process for vendors to be vetted, to make sure they're properly insured, that they're a real company, all those things. Well, there are situations that have happened where, you know, someone's gotten hurt on a property, and it's not just about covering the associations behind it. It's really also, it's covering the not the association, the management company. They're looking, you know, if somebody gets hurt, they're looking for any pocket that they can. And so I think that, and it is incredibly disruptive to the business, right? To deal with all that. And so managers already don't have enough time to get all their work done, especially during the portfolio world. And so now if you've got this big claim and a lawsuit, or it's very problematic, and it can be very expensive, not to mention somebody's gotten hurt, right? So that's something that's important. We talked about fraud earlier. I think that managers, again, they need to know why do we do this? Why do we have to use software for everything? Like, you know, why do we use CINC? Well, you know, actually we need to have a record for all the things that we're doing, because we need to be able to show our clients what we do for them, right? And we need also to be able to be organized and efficient. So I think that the best thing that management companies can do, they don't need to belabor everything, but is to remember to go and provide some sort of, I call it the one cheater in my mind, constant education of, you know, this is what the process is, here's why we do it. Just want to remind you guys that. Does anybody have any questions, kind of thing, right? Because again, they're touching so many things, it's hard for them to be focused on all these details, and, you know, not minding some of those details can be terribly problematic in some cases.
Definitely.
You know, just to hop on that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Connor. I was just saying the why is so vital, but then I was going to ask you any additional input.
Yeah, I just, you know, to hop on that, and it's sort of a hobby horse of mine, has been for years. The future of our industry, the future of HOAs in general, is moving towards a far more legalistic and compliance-oriented world. You know, we hit on a lot of the risks that associations are facing these days. But the bottom line is that the model that I think whether we built it or it just happened to us, is one in which we still see our manager's greatest purpose as, I don't know, talking about the colors of flowers during spring plantings. And that's not really what we're here to do anymore. And I think this is going to be a necessary adjustment for management companies to start de-emphasizing some of the more soft issues that come up, and really try and remain mission focused when board meetings are in place. You know, hopefully COVID, you know, I don't want to say there was a silver lining. Hopefully COVID helped us a lot change the nature of board meetings. Hopefully you're still doing web meetings. I think web meetings are conducive to business, whereas in-person meetings, at least in my experience, I spent most of my time in Phoenix, Arizona. Board meetings started to have the feeling of coffee clatches. You know, they go on for 2 hours, people just complaining about, you know, someone's dog pooping in the, you know, in front of their yard or something. And that's not what we're here to do. Basically every association in America is a multi-million-dollar nonprofit corporation. And, you know, Jared was just talking about board education, but also, you know, we do have a real problem with manager attrition, because so much of what our management companies present as value to our clients is that one person, a manager, who's going to sit there and listen to you yammer on about things and hopefully answer all of your emails in time and things along those lines. And I'm not saying that's not important, but we have to kind of nudge our clientele towards the real focus that they should be on, which is at any cost in terms of what else needs to go, is maintaining the financial future of the association. Whether it's making sure insurance costs stay down, making sure the board doesn't get sued for being overly vigilant in terms of pursuing things that we know might end up in court. Deferred maintenance, making sure that you're raising assessments on schedule to ensure that you can face those future costs. These are the things that management companies are ultimately going to be tasked with. And the longer that we wait to change the nature of these conversations, and as leaders within the space, say, I know that this is how you've done things in the past. And to come up with an example, I know that you've always hired your own vendors before. Here's why that's a bad idea. And here's what you're doing. You're gambling with your neighbor's money on hiring your own vendors when you have a professional management company in here that has risk management protocols as it relates to vendors, and you should be utilizing them. And, at the very least, we can't just keep saying yes to everything. We have to start pushing back. And, again, there is no silver lining to another terrible thing, which was the Surfside collapse in Florida. But we can now point at a very, real right tail event, but that is the ultimate ending point for not handling deferred maintenance, but also for a board and a community that was focused on all the wrong things. Instead of, is my place going to be standing in the future? They were focused on having a bunch of internal spats. And that was just, it was just a completely dysfunctional situation. And at the end of it, there wasn't even a management company involved. So it wasn't that it was a management company's fault, but somewhere along the way, someone might have been the game changer who said, guys, you don't understand. You have $9 million in necessary structural reinforcements that need to be made. There is nothing else to talk about. That's it. That is the only thing that we're here to talk about. If you guys want to have a conversation about paint, we can do that outside of the meeting. But the only thing that we need to focus on is this. And so I don't know that this has a necessary connection to what it is that we do. Again, I think we're parts of a compliance program or of a way of approaching business that hopefully reasserts the necessity of good business practices in the management of HOAs, because these are businesses, and no matter how much our clients may try and turn them into something a little more personal or treat it like they treat their own home, the bottom line is that that's not a viable strategy, and there are going to be more bad things happening down the road. And I just, even if they're going to be insistent on it happening, I don't want any of my management company brethren to be caught up in that.
Well, and related to all of the problems that Connor just said that we're facing in the industry, I think that also the expectations have changed for our vendors. I think they've changed for our homeowners. I'll give you a great example. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, and it's a huge banking city, the second largest banking city in the U.S. And a lot of the homeowners I've dealt with here, they've worked for the bank and one of the banks in some capacity. And of course, when they talk to management companies, I think that they think management companies have a bench that's 20 miles deep of people and all the resources in the world, and they want to pay, $500 a month for a management fee. And it doesn't, and you all know that doesn't work like that. But the expectations are that that the management company is going to have resources like, they're going to have a compliance program for vendors. They're going to have separation of duties or segregation of duties for their accounts payable, and have software that they as board members have visibility into, because as you all know, the buzzword that's been around for a decade that everybody likes to talk about all the time is transparency, right? And so they want to be able to see that. And historically, you used to not be able to see any of that stuff. It requires somebody going to the filing cabinet and making copies and all that. And I did that in my career. We were so behind in the association management space that in 2007, I remember making copies and for a board member asking for all this stuff, right? So I think that the expectations have changed. Vendors, they expect to be paid quickly now. You know, I went to someone's office the other day and I'm like, you know, we pay bills every 2 weeks. But you know, some people need to just understand that they need to be paid on net 30. I'm like, you know, it's 2023. No one wants to be paid net 30 anymore. They just don't, especially talking about smaller vendors serving associations. So
Yeah.
my takeaway is times have changed, and in the industry we need to adapt to that, and a lot of companies have done a really great job of doing that. But there are a lot of companies out there that they need to come to the other side, because I think that that's what the expectation is going to be going forward.
Most definitely. Guys, thank you so much. Like, what amazing insight, knowledge shared from two people who get it. They get, you know, what everyone is going through in the industry. They understand both sides of it. I can't thank you guys both enough for your time. I do want to just acknowledge, I know we talked a little bit about, you know, the realities of what we're all facing with banking and in that industry, you know, suffering a major collapse. And while we at CINC are so grateful that our bank partners are solid, and we were able to be certain of that throughout last week with checking in on them and whatnot, and leveraging that relationship. I do want to empathize with anyone who is out there not in a strong position, and let you know that this is where having vendor partners who really care about aspects of your business, like Connor and Jared have both shared, this is where having a partner to help you get through that is great. So if you're in that situation, by all means, please feel free to lean on us, lean on CINC, reach out. We're here, we're navigating that for some others. So I wanted to just acknowledge that and send our empathy out to anyone who's facing some major concerns. All the more reason, though, that, you know, we've got to reassess the expectations. I love that you said that, Jared. It's absolutely true. If you guys have any questions, if you're curious, want to dive further into the discussion, by all means, please feel free. If you are an existing CINC customer and you really want to understand more about VIVE or Strong Room and that integration within CINC, please leverage your account manager. Feel free to reach out to them. Feel free to connect with Connor or Jarrett on LinkedIn. If you're not a customer currently, feel free to go to cincsystems.com/request-a-demo. If you fill out that form, no hassle, no haggle. It's not necessarily just requesting a demo. You will get connected with us, and we can set up a call with you to answer any questions you have, whether it's about CINC. We can pull in Connor or Jarrett or any of our vendor or partnership resources to ensure that you get taken care of. But more importantly, you know, we're all facing a lot of uncertainty. But if there's one thing you can be certain of, it is your partnerships and just leaning on each other. So that's what we're here for. And with that being said, hope you all have a great rest of your week. Hope to see you Thursday for Rethink Homeowner Experience. And until then, be well. Connor, Jared, thank you so much.